to order at exactly 6. Yay. Glad you're here. Start, that's weird, but that's what happens when we change over. We have a lot of housekeeping to do and some important things to talk about. So can you hear me? Barb, can you hear me okay?
Right now I can, sure.
Okay, I'll try to
Thank
keep you. Please remind me if you can't. All righty. First order of business is approval of the October 21st board minutes. Have you all had a chance to look at them?
Yes.
Are there any additions, deletions, corrections? There being none, I'd entertain a motion, please, to approve those minutes.
I'll move we approve the October meeting.
Thank you, John. And may I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Andy. It's been moved and seconded. We approve those October 21st board minutes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, treasurer's report is the next on the list.
Okay, kind of basically pass this out. But basically, I think the financials were presented basically as part of your board packet. As you could expect this time of year, things are slowing down pretty dramatically. So, you know, we do see that reflected both in the income and the expense. You know, revenue as expected would be down to about $8,800 for the month of October. You know, we still did have some fishing tournaments and stuff kind of going on, so we did receive some watercraft fees and some launch fees as related to that. And then, so overall, we're just kind of holding steady there. Basically, the salaries and wages, looking at the expense side, is you know, down quite a bit this month as compared to previous months. And for a variety of reasons, both the lake being down and harvesting, we just really didn't have any dredging going on during the month of October. All other expenses basically are going forward as to be projected. The only other one that was kind of, you know, came involved and we paid in October was for the weed treatment. So we paid pretty close to about $5,000 for the treatment of weeds on that end of it as well. But overall, you know, basically as to be expected, we did kind of run into the red about $10,000 for the month, but we're holding up pretty well year to date, profit-wise there. And obviously, the next real big bump will be in December when the, you know, the tax revenue comes in at that time. Looking at balance sheet wise, you know, still basically doing real well. Have quite a bit of money still in reserve, both in checking and savings accounts. You know, about $298,000. Our general fund CDs, we've holding steady there. We have $116,000. And then our cumulative maintenance fund, we have $76,000 there as well. And then again, from a, you know, asset side, no real major changes, no purchases, and then obviously we're not in debt. So overall, basically looking at the financials, you know, life's in pretty good shape. Things are moving forward as to be expected for this time of year. And we're tracking, you know, fairly well in budget. Actually, income-wise, we're actually a little bit ahead of budget. So. Doing fairly well there, so would open it up for any questions if anybody has any.
I got one, the $5,000 other income, is that the layer grant?
Yes.
Okay. And if there is no other questions, if I could have a motion to approve. And second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. Thank you for that. Also in front of you, as part of the board packet, we do have the claims report for the claims approval. Total bills basically paid out for the month was $10,910. And is there any questions over any of the expenses as presented? Okay, if there is no question, if I could have a motion to approve the claims report.
I'll make that motion, Lance.
Okay, and if I could get a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that is my report.
Okay, thank you. Next business in order is the resolution about the 2016 board meeting dates, Resolution 11-1508. Has everybody had a chance to review those dates? And are there questions or is there discussion about them that needs to be dealt with?
The one thing I was going to state is the December 21st meeting is 4 days before Christmas. Do you want to do that on the 16th instead?
Ooh,
Or do we want to keep
yes.
it on that Wednesday? Or 14th, the Wednesday prior?
So it's the second, yeah, Wednesday of the month, the
That
second,
give us
third.
enough time for financials and everything
Yeah,
on the
because
business
she
side.
should get it in usually
They get
about
it in
4 or
pretty
5
early
days,
now.
yeah.
We've done that before when it gets too close like that. And as long as it gives you enough time, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, we should be in good shape that time of year.
Another thing, when we had just, it had been brought up, eliminating some meetings, it's in our bylaws that we meet every month.
Okay. Yeah, I think we've got 12 months on there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we actually wouldn't be able to do that.
I thought we only had to meet quarterly. This comes up all the time and I
It's
never
page 2.
do get it
Mhm.
straight.
I think in the Conservancy Act it says quarterly.
Quarterly, that's it,
Mhm.
thank you, in our
Yeah.
bylaws, all right. Oh, the July 23rd's on my wedding anniversary, so I guess you're not gonna move that for me though, are you? It'll be like Mike last summer.
John, if it's up.
Oh, well. Okay, any other discussion on those? Or
Did we
have you-
change the date? Or did-
Well, we need to make a motion to change, I
That's
guess.
what I'm waiting to hear.
Thank you, Mike.
I would move that we accept the calendar as presented with one change, and the change of December meeting date to the second Wednesday of the month.
And I worked that night, so I won't be here.
The second Wednesday's the 9th.
Okay.
The 14th.
Uh, the
14th is a Monday.
2016?
That's next
Yeah,
year.
2016.
So it's the 16th?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
No, sir. No.
14th.
The 14th.
14th.
in 2016.
Ann, are you on the wrong
Definitely a
calendar?
Wednesday, and I definitely work.
Okay. Okay, it's been moved that we change that to December 14th instead of December 21st. Any discussion?
I'll second it if
Second,
it
please.
wasn't.
Okay, yes, thank you, sorry. All right, all those in favor of that, those meeting dates with that change, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Okay, next on the list, and I just want to keep this brief. If you were at the August meeting, you remember that,
I was just going to tell him to.
Oh,
you want
sorry.
to enter that change in? Sorry, Madam Chair.
okay. At the end of the August meeting, a gentleman named Gary Lewis, who I believe he's your neighbor, Dave, or one over, challenged me to write a letter to help him with what he is kind of on. He's on a crusade to keep watch over the causeway, the Long Causeway, and has concerns about its integrity and the mowing. Anyway, we met with him the end of September. We kind of didn't get around to it right away, but he is asking for us to, or for me, and with the approval of the board, of course, to write a petition and/or a letter to help make sure that the causeway is more adequately maintained.
What the problem's been is that 100 yards out from the east side is Brown County,
Right,
and the rest of it is Monroe County. So both
Correct.
of them just sort of stop at either end of the causeway with repairs or mowing. So very seldom does anything get done on the causeway.
right, and that's his point. He said
Yeah.
he just feels like it's very neglected and wondered if we could help him by sending a letter, and I'd be happy to do that, but I wanted board input on whether, on what you think on this and how we should proceed before taking that step.
May I say one small thing about the causeway?
Sure.
I drove that causeway daily to go to work for, a long, long time, about 25 years. And my concern was, sure, mowing and trees and things like that are a big concern. I understand about that. What was always a big concern for me, though, is when things would get a little bit eroded and the blacktop was it, the very edge of the blacktop was it. And there were a few times when they simply came along and put some extra riprap and like some fairly large number 2 stone in a few places. And just knowing that there was about this much more, of something solid was very comforting when the weather was bad and things like that. And so I don't know. I saw the topic saying mowing and maintenance, and I guess that, I think that's as important as any mowing that we do.
one of his points to me was that it's a real, a much more direct route to emergency services in Bloomington than having to go all the way out 46. Having ridden over that thing with 3 broken ribs one day 2 years ago, I can tell you it is closer, but boy, is it bumpy. Anywho, maybe that was the ambulance driver, I don't know.
Well, if I recall in the past, I know we've tried to address the county on some safety issues in regards to the causeway, because I know there's been concerns about there's no railing, safety guarding, railings there. We could certainly, address the letter just to the effect that, we do have concerns about the safety and the maintenance of the causeway, and maybe address it from that angle.
I think that is exactly what he's asking.
We may need to look, because I think we've done or drafted a letter in the past.
Lance, I remember way back when we sent a letter to the county highway and copied the state highway and Senator Lugar and everyone we could think of about maybe putting some guardrails up, and we got no response.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I think the biggest concern that I have driving the causeway every day is there's that spot where they repaired that kept sinking.
Yeah, they repaired the dip,
It's
they
still
put in a new
sinking.
dip.
And it is.
It's still sinking, yeah, and so my little Honda isn't so bad, but when I drive the truck, it's not so good.
He was commenting that he and his wife sit and watched from, they have a beautiful view, and he said, you see the lights coming over, and they're just, hopping along, and I could see.
And that's the worst part of the long causeway, as far as the road is concerned, is Monroe County.
And that's who has 7/8 of it, so, okay.
They have a new director too.
Do they? Great. Okay, well, maybe we should start fresh. Well, I'm happy to work with Adam and try to draft this letter. Sorry? Yes?
Oh, that's okay. Another question. That's probably to Adam, because I was here when they put in a new conduit, and of course they did it wrong. Has he contacted you at all about, they said they were going to continue to measure the lake?
Not since his initial discussion when they said he talked with the engineer. There's been nothing.
I didn't think so. I've been measuring it monthly, and so far so good. It is staying almost the same level, which is the important thing, even though the only time water's ever gone through the conduit is when we had the really big flood, and it went through it for about 12 hours. That was it.
Really?
Yeah, and so it's, when the bump gets so bad again, they're gonna have to replace it, but try to get them to do it work.
In the correct location.
In the correct location, yes.
Well, we can work on that draft and bring it back to it's a good winter project, I guess, and it's, we'll start work on that with your blessing and come back to you with it and make sure that you're happy with it.
I will say something funny, if I may. When I talked to the engineer, I asked him about it, and I loved his answer. I wish I'd been taping it. When I said, why did you put it so high, blah, 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 he said, oh gosh, I never thought about that.
Great. All right, well, thanks for the input. Email me if you have other thoughts. All right, manager's report. Adam?
All right, small bars discussion. First, I'd like to say that I was contacted by John Langley, the deputy director at CBU. And he stated that he had received contact from a freeholder in Chitwood stating they're in process of starting a class action lawsuit against the LLCD for not dredging out the area. He said the city has zero intention of becoming involved with the process, but he just wanted to let me know.
I'd like to know who that was.
Next up, we asked the last meeting, what?
Who was that?
John Langley's the one that called.
Who told him that?
Who's bringing the class action suit?
He didn't say any names. He just said it was a person from Chitwood, and they had contacted him and his boss.
I'll beat that son of a bitch's ass if I find out who it is.
That's probably why it's there. It's anonymous.
It could be in this room, who knows?
Okay, Adam, keep going.
Next up on the small barge discussion, we had 3 barge builder quotes from last time, 3 contractor quotes. When we left the meeting, we had asked that DSG would convene and go over the different quotes in lieu of the new numbers that we had. So I guess we can start off there.
With the DSG,
Yeah, unless the board has discussion before the.
I have a question for you. So did the DSG meet?
the DSG never actually met. They couldn't find a day where all 6 members could get together. We have 1 member that has resigned. Lance's member has resigned. But in lieu of trying to find a day to meet, through emails and phone conversation, it appeared to me and all 6 members that we should stay the course with the small barge. So there was really no need to meet.
Was that directed also, was
Yeah.
that also sent to the office?
Yes.
So they knew that DSG was not agreeing?
I sent an email to the office, I don't remember the date, but I can find it. You remember? the
We
date?
got the initial email, and then we had the email stating the recommendation to stay the course on
Purchasing barge.
Friday, the 6th. It came in the night of the 5th, and so we received it on Friday the 6th.
Because your deadline for response was the 31st. That makes sense. You can check that.
Actually, I'm incorrect about that. We received it on Friday, it was the 30th. It came out on the 29th. This was the last Friday of the month of October.
Yeah, I sent the email Thursday, October 29th at 5:34 PM. And then in response to that email, Tim Speck responded that he agrees. Les Wodzinski responded he agrees. Greg McAtee, Pam, and Jeff Hartman, all members responded that they agree. I don't see any need to have a meeting.
I would like to note that the DSG is a committee of us.
We don't report, we're a standalone committee.
You don't report to the board or say?
Aren't you reporting to the board right
We make
now?
recommendations to the board.
Right. Which makes the committee fall under the open door law. It's right here on page 5.
Oh, whatever you want to see.
Okay. I'm just asking because this is my interpretation of it. In the open door law, electronic transactions cannot constitute a meeting, nor can they make a decision. So that you can't make a decision all through email and phone calls. There has to be a meeting held, is my understanding. Which I understand, that puts you in a bad position because you tried to hold a meeting.
Look, here's what I'm going to tell the board, is we have discussed this issue. We have all agreed that staying the course is what we want to do. It'll be up to the board to make that decision.
Okay. At the last meeting, we received new information. The 3 new.
Not new.
Yes.
Not new.
Yes, we did.
Let's not
These
interrupt.
were new. This is board discussion here, if you don't mind. These quotes were new for the barge, and these quotes for the dredging were new to the board as of last month. I was under the impression the DSG was going to take this new information, not just what they felt in the past, this new information and review it and report back also how they felt, given the past, given what they got last month, and then bring us a presentation.
You know, I'd rather you just not sugarcoat it and tell me what the hell you're trying to ask me.
I'm asking why the DSG did not hold a meeting with the new information
Every
that we
member,
had.
let me speak. Every member on that committee, including the manager, the biologist, got an email and had information that we were looking at subcontract dredging and staying the course with buying a small barge. Now, I've got all those emails. I brought them all tonight. If
Okay.
you want to see them.
Fine.
So I don't know what you're asking.
I'm asking why there was no meeting. I'm asking why they
Don't
did
know what
not
you can't
review the new
understand.
information.
No one could meet. Les teaches every day of the week on Saturday and every evening. Les couldn't meet. Tim couldn't meet because he had a busy architecture. So we've lost a member with Lance's. We just couldn't meet. We didn't have a quorum.
So then how is there an official recommendation? I don't see how there can be an official recommendation
If
there is
you're
no-
asking the board,
I'm asking, you're the head of the DSG now.
we couldn't meet.
That's why I'm asking you.
Okay.
So how can there be a recommendation from a meeting that never took place?
I've got all the emails here if you want to review them.
You can't,
Okay.
Right here in the
Okay.
open door law.
If we're gonna play this
Here.
game, because really, I don't think this is the game you want to play.
no, I'm not trying to play a game.
Okay, I want to stop you guys just for a second, because I can do that. I think Andy's point is that this was not an official meeting. Okay, that's fine. But I would like to make the point that Mike attempted to set up at least 3 different meetings. Some people were unwilling to come and wondered why we were going down the road again. So Mike then, we talked, and he decided, he and I conferred, and he took a lot of his time to run everybody down. So he could have just said, I can't have a meeting, and it wasn't apparently considered an official meeting, whatever. But he did spend a great amount of personal time contacting and making sure everybody had access to the new quotes that we had. And then they were given a deadline after he determined that each person had spoken. If they wanted to refute, they could, and everybody was on board. So I feel like he made a good faith effort, is all I want to say.
I agree with that.
I know part of my concern was that with the new quotes that came back, we're supposed to look at that with regard to the potential numbers of operating a small barge versus what the cost would be for contracting it out. Given that one of them came back right at about $16 per yard, it would have been nice to go through and talk about what we expected the small barge cost to be. Transit times will be the same, probably loading, unloading time will be the same for the small barge, but we're carrying 1/3 of the amount of sediment at most. Which in my mind is basic math, means they're gonna probably increase by about three times for the price of cubic yard. And I know that was one of the discussion points that I would like to talk about, or would have liked to talk about, is if we can't operate for that same price, why would we purchase equipment and then operate at a higher cost than we could have just contracted it out without purchasing the equipment initially?
I just wanted to see the DSG together.
We're gonna have to meet, and I don't
Yeah.
know when we'll meet. So if that's
I don't know that
makes sense.
you, and you're the head of it, I'm not. I don't know that you don't eventually just have to set a date and, you know what I mean?
I don't think you
It's
heard anything
frustrating.
I said.
I heard.
I never got 4 people that could meet on that date
Yeah.
when I set a date. So we'll just have to set another date before the December meeting.
Even without the meeting, I think it's a good discussion for the board members to have between the board members about cost of operating versus cost of contracting it out.
And we can still have that, if you want to argue that this is not an official meeting, that did not occur,
No.
that's fine. We can still have a good conversation here about these.
Yes.
I'd like to hear some of these facts. I'd like Mike to present.
Well, what I'd like,
What he
you want
has,
to
and I'd like the board
subcontract
members to
Chipwood,
weigh
is that
in.
what you want to do? Because this is real easy. This is real easy.
Yeah, if we could.
Does Chipwood want to be subcontracted?
No,
It's not
about
up to
just
Chipwood.
one part of the
This is
land.
not- this
No,
is
but
not-
the board
One-
should,
one-
the board should hear
One at a time.
what the body
We're the
wants.
freeholders.
Right. If,
We're the
if,
ones paying. What do you guys, what's the matter, you
This-
guys?
This is a board discussion right now. Just,
Yeah,
this is a board discussion. There is,
Come on.
Just a minute.
This is
We're going to limit
ridiculous.
this
A little
discussion
newbie.
to the board
Oh,
for
you
now.
better go open. You better. We'll open it.
I'm going to wait till you're quiet. All right. We've started. I want to hear from everybody on the board with the information that we've gotten a lot of information. We've been talking for a long time. And then when we're done, you all will have a brief opportunity to speak. I'm not going to have disorder. We cannot get anything done with people talking out of turn. And I'm just not going to have it. It's not the way to do business.
And if
All
we're
right.
all in agreement, we can move forward even without the
Yes,
DSG
we
meeting.
We can
Yeah.
still get something done, but let's exchange information. All right, so let's keep balanced about this. Mike, you've had a chance to speak, and I'm not going to limit you to one, but let's hear from somebody
absolutely.
on the other side.
no, Mike really didn't get a chance to finish because I asked him about the
Okay.
meeting, which was not him getting to,
All right, well, then I
To
would
go
like...
into
I-
details, so,
If he
Mike.
wants to speak now, that's fine. If he'd rather wait to the end, that's fine, too.
I just have one more comment. I received an email from Marty on October 22nd, Thursday, October 22nd. I'm just going to read you one sentence. He thinks that hydraulic dredging, as discussed last night, may be a great option for the future, but not right now, not for Chitwood. You guys have waited too long and to some extent have been treated like second-class citizens by the board, given that they have been working on this project for some 5 years, with a lot of smoke but no fire, as other areas of the lake have been dredged out for years. In conclusion, he would like to throw his total support behind the immediate purchase of the equipment from MAC, who seem to have the best price. I continue to believe that you should get the biggest barge excavator to avoid the tinker toy issue raised colorfully. Please feel free to relate my support at your DSG meeting, which I wasn't able to hold. I will be prepared to voice my support and vote for the immediate purchase of the equipment at the next meeting. Now, I don't know if Marty still stands by that.
I stand by the DSG recommendation. That's the protocol that we set up, and I don't see any reason to change it at this point. The DSG recommends that we buy the barge. I think we should buy the barge. That's what that was their charge, is to make that recommendation, and I really don't give a flip about whether they had a formal meeting. Mike's the head of the DSG. If Mike says that's his recommendation, I mean, I watched Peyton Manning fumble the ball for 4 times, and it wasn't as painful as watching this board get Chitwood taken care of, and I think it's distracting the board from other issues, and I think we need to get on with it. If the DSG thinks that's the best way to go, obviously Chitwood does. Let's buy the barge and get it done.
Thank you, Marty.
If he has a different recommendation, I'll probably go along with that. That's the protocol we set up. There's no point in changing it now.
John, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I looked at my district, in particular, District 4. It's a complicated shoreline. It lies along North Shore Drive, more or less. But let me take you on a little geographical thing. What I'm calling Reed Point Bay is the location of the Whittegrens, the Summermeyers, Buckos, Santa Rosas, and Arbuckles. They all have access to that bay, and the bay is far too shallow and far too small for anything but a very nimble piece of equipment. Heading north from that bay, you're going to come to a bay that is hard to describe. It's to the east of the marina. There are 4 homes in there, and these are the only homes there are 2 in that bay. Palmer and Teed could actually use the big barge. The marina tenant bay has 4 private homes on it, and all of our tenant docks. Incidentally, we have lost 19% of our docks due to the sediment in our bay, which is not accessible to the big barge. And that's a direct loss to the Conservancy of just the 25 tenants of $3,575, because those people pay a dock fee and they pay a permit fee. Then on the other side of the marina, the fuel bay, again, not accessible to the big barge. Hamels, Myers, Stevens, 2 unoccupied lake lots, and Art Holden all could use dredging. Finally, heading further west, Doug Bansell has a more or less a private bay. He desperately needs dredging, and the next bay over is where Steve Freeman and Gernix need dredging. None of these can be done with a big barge. So I'm with Marty and with Mike in recommending that we stay the course.
Thank you. Lance, would you care to speak? I believe you represent the other viewpoint. We want to be balanced.
Yeah, and I appreciate, everybody's, viewpoint and things of that nature. And I just, for me, it's really not an issue of to dredge or not to dredge, but it's really the best way and the most efficient way to try to dredge. And so this is not a question of dredging Chitwood or dredging the smaller channels, but it's really a question for me of whether or not, we could do it more efficiently in-house, or whether or not, we could do it more efficiently by subcontracting it out. And I did try to do some analysis because, basically, I guess in a little bit of my role, I tend to be the numbers guy and try to kind of back in to which would be the, the best way. And one of the biggest issues that we have on Lake Lemon is, and I think it came out in the survey, everybody's for dredging, but nobody wants to pay more for it. So we've got to figure out ways to try to make the most efficient and get the most dredging that we can and keep the budget at the same level that we can. So my concern in purchasing the small barge is it's going to tie up an awful lot of capital. We're probably going to be looking at over $200,000, dollars plus by the time it's said and done, once the barge is purchased and the excavator is purchased. I'm also a little bit concerned with when we look at a cost by yard standpoint, whether or not we could do it when you start to factor those costs in more efficiently than the bid that we received, which was $16, a square yard. Again, I tried to take some factors into play. Obviously, as we mentioned, the barge is going to only be about a quarter of the size. The bucket's only going to be about half the size, so we're going to have to swing it twice as much to get the same amount of material out. And so my only concern in the purchase is even running some of those numbers, I kind of referred back to what we did in 2014. Also back in 2012, actually Shirley Watkins, our bookkeeper, ran some numbers too, and I kind of took some of her assumptions. I was coming up with it would cost us between maybe conservatively about $15 to $16 a square yard for the smaller barge, where we're about $9 or $10 a square yard, for the larger barge. So my concern there is if it costs us the same, even if it's a little bit less, are we better off to go with a subcontractor, versus doing it in-house? Because the thing about the subcontractor is that $16 a square, yard is fixed. Whereas ours is variable. I mean, we could do a little bit better, but we could also do a lot worse. We could have equipment breakdowns. The time and effort that it takes to go in there and dig it out could be variable because we really don't know. And so if anything, I was probably leaning toward maybe at least making use of that contract to at least maybe dig out one or two channels and see kind of what kind of cost factor that we're looking into and try to kind of estimate it that way and then kind of go from there. I don't know if many of you remember, actually, when we went in and purchased the big barge, we didn't purchase it blindly. We had a whole lot of data, really to support that because we actually had Dick Payne, basically that did it for 3-4 years prior to us actually going in and making that purchase. So we knew we had a pretty good idea of what our costs were and such. In addition, Dick Payne did okay. He charged about $18 a square yard, cubic yard versus the $16 that we're being charged now. So that's really my feelings. I would probably like to be a little bit more and say, let's go ahead and, maybe subcontract out at least the first portion of it, see how it goes, and then kind of evaluate it from there so that we could get a better idea, of what our cost per square yard is and estimate it, at that standpoint. So that's kind of my feeling.
Thanks. David, I think you're left.
One stance I have that a lot of people have taken, if you are not for one way or another, they feel that you are not pro-dredging. I'm with Lance, I'm with most of the people. This lake needs dredging, and it needs it in a lot of places. And there are some critical areas that need something taken care of now. One way that would get things taken care of now would be subcontracting it. But that's not the most important thing. I feel we need to be fiscally responsible and we need to look at our cost per cubic yard. Lance did some numbers. The way he came up with his numbers was different than how I did. We ended up with somewhat similar numbers using similar variables. I used our 2014 sediment report from what we know from the large barge and modified it to the variables that the small barge will have. I could not get the numbers when I was working towards the low end to come close to the SRS subcontracting numbers. And on the high end, it was even worse than that. Another thing I noticed, the 3 professional contractors that we had give us numbers, none of them propose doing the dredging in the manner we do. They do it for a living. They understand what is the most efficient way because it affects their profits, and they do not propose doing it the way we do. They do not propose hauling the excavator to where you dig, driving the excavator all the way back to unload, driving it all the way there to where you dig. Very inefficient. They know that. They don't do it that way, so they make a profit. Yet we are still going down the road of looking at doing it in that manner. They were going to bring it out and truck it to the site because it's much more efficient. So that right there tells me that we're not looking in the best interest of the lake by going with the purchase of a small barge. And also, when I attended the one DSG meeting, I asked for someone to show me how they obtained the figures that they proposed for the per cubic yard totals for the anticipated small barge, and no one went through that math for me. I never got, I can show you every way that I worked the numbers to come up with the answers I came up with. These are my projections based on the facts from our data we have in-house, numbers we can trust. No one presented any numbers in another way that said that our small barge that we're proposing would dig at a smaller cost per cubic yard. And then in the end, that's what we want to do. We want to remove sediment at the lowest price, period.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, I promised the public you would have a chance to speak. We've gotten to that point. Please keep it reasonably brief. Ron?
Lance, you talked about doing your numbers. That was based on the large barge and cubic yards per year and everything. You also said you figured some numbers. Are you figuring, both of you, and someone's made the comment, we dig and we travel. We have a shuttle barge. It's called the big barge. When you're doing a large project, Chitwood, you're going to be up there a while. You pull in with the small barge. You have the shuttle barge that holds 100 cubic yards. You come out of the fingers and coves. You load it onto the big barge. You take 100 cubic yards one trip at a time. There is the unload, but you don't have the travel. Did you figure the cost of that?
You're talking about handling the dirt twice now and still traveling across the lake and
Is that
unloading.
faster than traveling all the way there and unloading it and coming back each time?
We have the travel for,
I'm saying
we have
don't
large
make the
barge
travel. That's the
figures.
time. You travel right outside of the dig area and you put it in the big barge. You're going to take 4 small barges full at one trip.
Okay.
Did you figure that?
And to answer your question, no, I didn't. The reason I didn't do it that way is we still have one issue, and that is we only have one crew.
If you're going to have 2 barges, we're going to want 2 crews anyhow.
We don't have the budget for 2 crews.
We're pretty close. With the $46,000 extra, with the money that we saved, I figured this up, Mike, and we discussed this, we're at about 170. That's almost double what we budget right now.
And this is using what number of cost per cubic yard with this barge? What is your projected cost per yard with the small barge?
We don't know. We will have, we don't.
We have
It's
an
all
idea from the
speculation.
poll. We have an idea from Heritage Lake. We have a good idea
Okay.
of what they're doing at Heritage Lake.
And we're just taking their numbers.
We have a
What do you
good
want?
idea.
What
We have a good
I'll
idea.
say for this
What
small barge.
what is their number per
What is
cubic
it,
yard?
$13 or $14 per cubic yard?
It was around $13 cost for that smaller, which was smaller than the one we're talking about. That's a cost.
My gripe is,
And he's a business guy that does it for a living and makes a profit.
At 4 different lakes.
Okay. I can't just take someone else's data at face value. I don't.
But you're asking us to take your data at
No.
face value.
I'm taking our data and using it.
You came up with numbers that are different than Lance's, and you
Right.
want us to take them at face value. That's what you're asking us.
I'm telling you, these are what I came up with. Now I want you to show me how they're doing it at $13.
He's a businessman. We have all that in the first bid and last summer before you came on this board. We had all those numbers. We had every place that he did the digging, every lake that he worked at. The problem is he backed out of the deal.
The point is you don't have hard numbers. We don't have hard numbers. There's different ways you can configure these numbers. We have a shuttle barge and we know that the small barge is going to travel faster, I'm sorry. It's smaller. A bigger boat goes slower than a smaller boat. It is going to go faster. But I'm saying that there are other options that we can use for big digs to utilize the big barge that we already have and is paid for. And we're crazy if we don't. And then the small barge, when you're doing small projects like his, no.
It ain't gonna take long.
It ain't gonna take long. So,
Yes, Ron, are you done for the moment?
yes, I'm done for right
If you
now.
take the hydraulic numbers for the Chipwood area, and for the hydraulic dredging, they came in and they gave us the numbers for that. Those cubic yard numbers are low because you're doing one setup, you're in one location. Well, when you go do a smaller cove, then you have to go and one large setup for one small cove, and that cubic yard price goes up. It doesn't stay the same.
I was talking about the SRS.
The mechanical.
The mechanical dredging.
How are you gonna do that without damaging the road?
Yeah.
You got all these triaxle dump trucks running
We gonna put the
sludge up and down South Shore, up and down all these roads out here and totally destroying them.
Do you know how many
Yeah, I do. I live on
of-
South Shore.
thousands of dump trucks travel up and down all the roads every day?
Down personal
How are you gonna
drives.
keep all that sludge and water, muck, debris?
Have you been up there in our area?
Just like, yeah, I have.
How you
I was
gonna
at a
park
party. You weren't there. I've been on thousands of construction sites that have trucks go in and out every day. Okay.
Yeah, I was on one too.
Okay.
They just done Walmart in Greenwood.
I'm gonna-
You know how they kept it from going out on 135? They paid people to wash your trucks when they come out. You gonna do that?
Thank you. Tina, I'm going to give you a
Well,
chance to speak.
just to answer his question.
She's got it.
If you remember, back in
You don't know what you're talking
2011,
about.
2012, we were actually the ones that found Zach Crumley. Nice guy, I like him. We went down to Sweetwater and watched his operation, and he has special dump trucks that are sealed on the inside, and that they don't leak, and we watched it, and they don't.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's this with this one contractor. So that's just one question I'm answering for you. But my other concern is, Lance, you were throwing out numbers just a few minutes ago and you were worried about, money. And I just did a quick math, and at $16 a yard, with $200,000, all we're gonna get is 12,500 total yards of sediment done, and we're out of money, and we're not near done. I'm very much concerned that we're just digging a hole and gonna throw that money in there, because I don't see the goal. The reason why the study group didn't study this is because this has been presented over and over and over again, and we've heard from many, many board members, past and present, that it does not make sense. It does not make sense to contract out when you can have this equipment and you can own it. Because we've had estimates, and we've had, I probably have the same estimate right here from SRS from 2012. At that time, his 3,000 his 3,000 yards was going to cost us $50,000. At that time, at 3,000 yards or cubic feet, it was only going to be one lane. And I have it all right here.
Yeah, we estimated about 7 for the 3 interchanges.
And so you're saying how much is that going to cost?
We're about just over $100,000.
But that's one area. And now we've thrown away $100,000. And yeah, they're dug out, but now we don't. Now what are we going to do about maintenance? Are we ever going to have maintenance back there? Are we ever going to we go through and we do all this maintenance everywhere? Or we're trying to do maintenance, which is what the SRP is set up. And the one thing about the DSG is when we started, we never deviated from the SRP plan. We stayed on course with what they had in mind. We were just trying to figure out better ways to possibly do it and see if we were ready for the next steps. The next steps was to buy a smaller barge. That was the next step. There was never any mention about contracting. In fact, that was, and Marty can attest for this, I have him quoted all over the place from 2008 to 2012 to just now. It is never a smart business to contract something when you can run it yourself and you can save money. And we have estimates of what our equipment is worth now. Do we have that now? Because I have it from 2012 of what our equipment's worth.
I'm not positive. I do know we're gonna have to redo the whole sediment box deck in the next year or two. because the metal's completely wavy and about to bust.
I
through.
remember when I had the estimates from Butch Evans Equipment. You know, was that the estimates that you were looking at of what our equipment's currently?
I didn't see it. What do you have there?
It's just, I mean, it's all in the, it's all online. I pulled this one from offline this morning. I mean, it's all in the computer. So I mean, there's nothing secret here. This is just, you know, it's all the information that we've already done the math. We've done it over and over and over again. You know, and it just doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. A quick fix is not the answer. I understand it. I mean, I do understand it. Removing 3,000 cubic yards, that's great when we can do that. But I think we need to really think about what we're doing with our money. And like I said, $200,000 in, 12,500 cubic yards. And where's our $200,000?
I disagree with one statement there where you said it's always profitable to not subcontract out. There are many things in contracting that people subcontract out. There are many things in every one of our personal lives that we subcontract out. None of us do everything ourselves. You know, we didn't build our own car. We may work on it. You subcontracted that out. You in construction.
I didn't rent my car forever. I
Yeah.
did buy it.
Many things are more profitable to subcontract out. As a contractor, there are many things over the years that we thought, we can do that and we'll do it for less. And we've done it and realized, nope, we're better off to pay someone. There are many things that we do that we are good at that are very profitable. So to say that it is always better to not subcontract out, I do not agree.
Since Tina mentioned my quote, I'd just like to, if I could, just follow up on what you said. It's the intangibles that I don't think we're really picking up on. When we bought the big barge, we didn't even think about riprap. We didn't think about debris removal. Those were great serendipities. We're like, wow, we can use this. We had a 100-year flood in 2008. What would we have done without that barge? We would have had a contractor come in for buku dollars to do what we could do with our own equipment. I think the same thing's going to happen with the small barge. We're going to be able to do small riprapping jobs. We're going to be able to get into the areas that John mentioned. Icebox Cove, there's a guy there that can't get out. We can't afford to go in with the big barge. It's not cost effective. With the small barge, we would be able to justify it. We have another excavator at the disposal site. And at the worst case scenario, we sell the equipment. I just think that I agree with Andy, there's times to subcontract it out, but we are so glad that we bought that big barge. There's so many benefits. And there's benefits to having a small barge that we're not even thinking about. Private contracting jobs. You know, we're going to have a contractor set up a private dredging project for everybody in Chitwood that wants it. We've already got a protocol set up. Is he going to be willing to do that? You know, that's going to be a big issue. He may not want to deal with small jobs. How are these people going to get their small dredging projects done if we don't have our own equipment? So it's the intangibles, and I honestly have to say I think there's a lot of fear going on tonight. I think it's much easier to hire a contractor, and I'm very disappointed with the management. I think we're operating under fear. I don't think we want to go through the trouble. It's easier to just hire somebody, and if we had done that with the overall dredging project, we wouldn't be half where we are now.
I don't think you can take concerns of fiscal responsibility and then just say that that is fear. I feel I'm trying to look at this logically and fiscally. Fear doesn't factor in at all. Okay. So that's almost rude to even say.
I wanted to ask John, because you had talked about the number of folks there who didn't have access to the lake because of the sediment, and you had talked about income that would come in after it was cleared up. But I didn't remember how much income from all the areas.
Well, everybody, the marina is different because, of course, we're a for-profit, but we have lost 19% of our dock capacity to sediment. And if those docks had tenants at them, each of the tenants would be paying roughly $150 directly to the Conservancy. And so when you just do the math, it shows up as a loss of almost $4,000 every year that would be going into the Conservancy if our bay still had water.
And that's
Is that
just
clear
your
now?
bay, so it could be that the other areas that have no access right now, that could increase with some revenue.
I think all those other areas now have enough access that they do go ahead and buy their boat permits. I don't believe anybody is landlocked yet.
Close.
Sir.
Well, I think it's positive, the fact that we would bring in income to offset some of the expense.
Mhm.
It's certainly not one of those that you're gonna look at payback in years, but.
To be determined. Yes, sir.
I'm a little out of the loop on all of this, but as I listen to this discussion, there are two thoughts that come into my mind pretty strongly. I'm very sensitive about cost and things like this and being fiscally responsible, as you were saying. And, you know, I understand about, you know, contractors are going to be extremely efficient at what they do. And you're probably going to get a very good price, you know, from someone who does it professionally, whether you hire them, whether you contract them, and all of those things. And, you know, sometimes that is absolutely the right thing to do. What I also see is that in an area like this lake, you know, you've got a lot of opinions, you've got a lot of special needs, things like that, okay? And there's intangibles such as Marty mentioned and things like that, okay? Now, you know, a solution that is the least expensive solution is here, okay? A solution that is maybe the best solution for the lake, the freeholders, the board, whoever else may have a concern, okay, might be a little bit more expensive. I don't know. I think that's likely, you know, however we did things. But I also think that if there's a solution that's clearly better, we need to look at something other than just the cost per cubic yard. So sometimes I think the cost per cubic yard isn't the only concern. The other thought that occurs to me is I hear a lot of speculation on numbers and things like this, and got to do it, got to take the best scientific, you know, whatever guess you can make, okay? And who knows if we're even in the ballpark or not. And another thought that occurs to me is and I'm ignorant, is there a possibility of doing something like proceeding with the dredge, but leasing the equipment in such a fashion that if we decided to keep it, any money that we spent on the lease payments would be buying the dredge. And if we decided not to, we could back out. But if we ran it for a season or a month or whatever, instead of sitting there going, well, I calculated it this way, and I calculated it this way, and this is the high end and this is the low end, we could see how it fits, you know.
Absolutely.
Is it clearly better, and how much did it cost? It was this much right here. You know?
Thank you. For
And I will gladly manage whatever we decide to do.
All right.
I will competently and successfully manage it. If we are all in agreement, all we need is a motion,
I
a
was
movement from the
just
board
going there. Thank
to
you.
proceed in a direction. And with this
Would you care to
looming
make a motion?
lawsuit,
Yep. I think we should make that motion and vote.
I think that what I'm
Mike,
looking
is
at is having management looking at all three of the bids and getting contracts ready for all three, just in case. I'm not really that comfortable with MAC, but I think if we my motion is to have management have contracts ready for all three bids of the small barge.
All right, it has been moved that we have management procure contracts with all three barge builders. May I have a second?
I second it.
Is there any further discussion?
Why would we not discuss which avenue we're going down before?
I made my motion.
He's made a motion, it's been
You
seconded.
said discussion. You did just
We've
say.
been having it. We've been having it. We just had a
I think I
recommendation.
explained
to
why
make
three builders.
I thought you just said, is there any other discussion? So
on this motion.
that's what I was talking
I'd
about.
rather not do
Thank you,
that.
Adam. I didn't like Mac's email.
He's been hard to get hold of, unresponsive. He's told us before, didn't like dealing with governments. I know it's a lowest bid, but I would prefer to use the Sun, which was the middle.
On his motion.
Middle quote.
A comment on his motion, is that what is acceptable now?
I asked for discussion on the motion that is on the floor. Yes.
Okay.
Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay.
We haven't picked an avenue, but we're motioning towards contracts. I'm confused.
You can do
For the
that. That's,
building of the
Okay,
barge.
all right.
that's how you,
All
that's
right.
how you do it. Okay, it has been moved and seconded that management procures 3 contracts from the 3 barge builders. I'd like a show of hands vote. All in favor, please raise your right hand. James, are you recording?
Got it.
All opposed? Got that too? Motion carries. Thank you. And thank you for the relatively controlled discussion. These are not fun. Yes, ma'am.
I've been trying to ask a question. And I understand you're gonna get 3 quotes from
We already
these
have 3
barge-
quotes.
You already have 3 quotes?
We already have 3 quotes. We're going to draw contracts up with the 3 builders, so we don't have the problem that happened last time with the guy backing out. And we're gonna let management take those contracts to those 3 builders, because I can tell you one of them won't even be able to read it. And so we're gonna take those to those 3 builders, and then he's got the authority of the board to pick a builder who will sign that contract at the next December meeting.
You didn't have to put those out on bid or anything? I mean.
No.
They were,
No, it's separated. It's less than $150,000. We only had to receive quotes. Then we can select from the quotes.
Well, if one couldn't even read whatever you're gonna be, the contracts, why are you even sending it there then?
He was the
He'll
lowest
have his
bid.
attorney read it,
Yeah.
and if his attorney gives him good advice, maybe he'll be our builder.
And he was the lowest bid, Barb. He was the lowest, which isn't always the way to go.
He built the current barge that we have.
Okay, folks,
No, I was
if
just asking, that's all.
we have a list, and if we don't want to be here till Thanksgiving, I want to ask Adam to start in on the approval of these multi-agreements.
All right, 2016 agreements. First, we have the agreement for use of Riddle Point Park property from the Boys and Girls Club. There really has been no changes in regards with last year. They're a well-established organization. They make great use of the park. Their camps that they use the park. So I would like to go ahead if everybody's had a chance to review it, and we can just approve the agreement for the use of Riddle Point Park. If anybody has any discussion
I'll move that we approve the use of River Point Park
for Boys and Girls
for the
Club.
Boys and Girls Club.
Would you like to second it?
I can have it
Oh,
stand.
you
Yes,
can't get to say that, I'm
yeah.
sorry, I was thinking, sorry. We'll just do them, okay. John had suggested to me in my right ear that we bundle everything but the Shell Marinas, so I don't know if we can,
I'm okay with that.
We can't. I think that might be,
You can't bundle them if you can't vote on one of them.
We have to break out
That-
Shell
what-
Marina and Boys and Girls
and
Club.
we'd have to, yeah, we do this one and then do the 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so we have a
Motion on 1.
motion on number 1, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Down to Madam Chair.
And I have to abstain as I'm on the board.
Correct. Okay, Nick, number,
So I guess 2 and 3 we can bundle. Marina Club agreements, Bloomington Yacht Club, and the IU Sailing Club. Has everybody had a chance to review them?
No changes from previous years.
No changes from previous years.
I move that we accept the Yacht Club and the Sailing Club as presented.
I'll second it.
been moved and seconded, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next.
All right. Riddle Point Park use agreement, Riddle Point Rowing Association. No changes from last year.
I move that we accept as presented.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. 6 and 7 together, and John will have to recuse himself, right?
So we'll bundle together the Shell Marina Marina Club agreement and the service agreement for sale of boat permits. There's been no changes. Everyone's had a chance to review them.
I move to accept as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I abstain.
Okay.
Land use agreement with Kenny Clark. We have been in contact with Edith Clark. She said her husband has not shut us out of the property yet. So if
That was
everybody's
gonna
had
be
a
my
chance to,
question, yeah.
no, she said he hasn't complained yet. So if everybody's had a chance to review it, we'll go ahead and seek a motion to approve that.
I'll make that motion. Adam?
The
I'll
land use
second.
agreement. Mark?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We extend our land use agreement with Kenny Clark. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Check.
Final one is the IU rowing agreement for their events. On the back of the addendum, there was a big description of the events that will be going on. It happens every year. It's the Big Ten rowing events on their major competitions. Often they're televised nationally. I think it's great publicity for the lake. Whoever's had a chance to review.
And then I assume, as in past, I know we restrict usage of the lake during that.
Yes, inside the agreement, we will, on the days of the competitions during rowing hours, we will again make the northwest end no wake zone. In the agreement, we'll have the LLCD patrol boat out there protecting the zone. They will be utilizing the whole park. One difference is that they asked if they could bring a dock down just for the day to set it on the beach for launching of their boats.
I think they've done
The
that in
skulls,
the past,
yeah. So I don't think that'd be a problem. So if everybody's had a chance to review that, I think we should.
Move to accept as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's all of them.
All right, that is our 2016 agreements. Board election update. We have received one official letter from Marty's district. We have not received anything else from Dennis Friesel's district as of now. Everything must be in by December 1st with the 5 signatures and their official letters. So that's where we stand now.
Yeah, those are good.
Public comments are just coming in.
Winter drawdown update, we discussed that last time, 3.5 feet, we'll start drawing down at the beginning of December. I'm actually we're so low right now, unless the water comes up, I think I'm gonna pull our docks at the Riddle Point Park at the end of this week, because the floats closest to the land are just sitting on riprap now. I'd rather avoid damage, so this Thursday, tomorrow or Friday, we'll be pulling those docks out. Once the docks are out, we won't be charging for launch fees anymore. And once the docks are, I think the office will just be Monday through Friday, standard business hours, 9 to 5. There'll really be no reason to be there on weekends without any revenue during the winter time. That's just an update there. And I guess that is the manager's report.
I think yours went.
Find them all.
I
Okay.
hope so. We got a file cabinet down here. Okay. Public comment, are we there already?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes, sir.
Are we still planning on doing any dredging? I know the water is down and you're probably not going to be able to do anything in any other areas other than on the west end. Are you still planning? I know the barge is there. They haven't winterized anything. Are you still?
This year?
Yes.
No. I think a good majority of the remainder of the hours I'm going to use for disposal site prep. I want to build an earthen berm around the entire disposal site and grass it. That way we have a permanent siltation prevention. Instead of having to go back every year, redo the silt fencing, we always get complaints. Items been down a couple times to look at it, and that really seems to be the most feasible, is to use the current dirt we have, put a perimeter up, seed it, and we're good to go there. Then we just have to maintain the road. So I think a good portion of hours will go to that, and we'll be having the crane out probably in the next week or two to take the push boat off. We use the push boat to take the dock out, and then after that will be.
How many hours do we have left over?
Close. There's about 200 hours right now.
200? Okay. And then the last thing on the rowing thing, I don't know if you've ever had anyone complain this, but I think that we have a potential risk of someone getting hurt. Down there in that cove, those cables are buried on the bottom, and I know because I was pulling in, and when people tie up and the anchors are out.
Which cove? Dam cove, okay.
Yeah, down by the dam.
And you get a bunch of boats, or even one boat, and an anchor hooks that, and the wind, it lifts it up. And I was coming in my boat and hooked it with my motor. And there were people swimming and a guy screaming because this cable is going along his legs with 2 kids beside him.
When the lines were in there, when the rowing.
They're on the bottom right now.
Yeah.
Not the buoys.
We have actually heard one other person mention that, and we will be in touch with them. I think we should get some orange buoys and anchor them off that way above. I'm not sure if it's cables or cinder blocks
It's
or
cables.
what down there.
Steel cables.
It's cables, and if my motor had have cut that under tension and went across someone's leg, it's going to lay them open.
At a
So
minimum.
I'm questioning, do we need those cables buried in that part of the lake where people are anchoring all over the place. Because it's the anchor, and then the boat moves, it drifts, pulls it up.
They just sink it?
They're sunk on the bottom.
Okay, so
I don't think we've ever had a good understanding of how they hook that up, so we can talk to Steve and see kind
Yeah, we'll
of what
talk
the
to
setup
him.
is and if there's some.
But they will come up 20 foot. And someone's going to get
They're
hurt.
flexible.
See, I didn't realize that the cables ran the entire time all year long. I was under the impression that they laid out the cable.
They're there, you're
and then
right.
there was a floating cable
But they
underneath.
should be on the bottom.
They should be.
But the anchor,
He's saying if someone's boat anchor hooks in and pulls it
and
up.
they're drifting, it pulls it
I
up.
hooked it a couple times this year.
But my motor, it was up so high from anchors lifting it up, and had it cut it, I mean, this guy, he was screaming.
Yeah.
Thank God my prop didn't get it, it just hooked on an outboard.
Maybe they keep one line in, because I've seen them take the lines in and out, those white buoy lines, they roll them up.
Yeah, but they may set
There
down
may be a
there.
main line or.
Yeah, they set an anchor.
We'll discuss, I'll get a hold of him, we'll discuss that, and see how they're actually anchored. and
All
stuff like that.
Right.
That's all I have.
Those things.
You had a comment over here.
I just was curious, can you tell us who from my district sent in a letter? Or is that privilege?
You need to call John Langley.
Call John. For what?
No, he's talking about the
the election.
update.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You know what I'm talking about? You said someone sent in a letter from Marty.
Can I? I think I can.
I didn't know if you could
I
say
don't know
I can
election.
just-
Who's running?
Yeah.
Mary Jane.
Yeah, Mary Jane Brown.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good thing.
I actually had one letter from David Carrico in Andy's district. He couldn't be here tonight, but he wrote a letter. He has a tree that's getting ready to fall in and crush his neighbor's dock in the canal just west of the porthole. It is on private land. I told him we're really not in the business of subsidizing tree cutting on private land, but he asked for me to hand this out to the board and bring it up. Essentially, he got a quote for $1,000, and he wanted to see if the board would pay for half of it. I told him we don't have a budget. I assume it'll be a quick discussion.
It's a housing building to sell.
I said earlier, but I would figure, I said I'd bring it to the board for him since he couldn't be here, so.
Sue?
I actually have two things. First thing that I wanted to mention was that thank the office for getting a notice out in the newsletter about the 501c3 that we can get started. And hopefully we'll have some response for that. But to date, I only have $800 towards the $3,000 that's required to open that. So unless there's some movement in that area, there will not be, we won't have the attorney engaged and go ahead and submit that to the state.
Is there what's our deadline? Remind me.
Well, there's no deadline. We're filing, the plan is to file for quick and dirty turnaround.
Okay, okay.
Put it in paraphrased terms. If people want to be able to donate yet this year and have tax deduction, it needs to be immediately, but if that doesn't happen, then it's whenever, and then of course that has to be in place for the board to be able to seek out grants that would allow you to use that.
Can the board loan you money?
No, it's individual pledges, and people just need to contact me privately and let me know that they would, all I need is a pledge. I will give this much money. And once I know we've got the money covered.
It still comes from the board.
But that's individuals.
No, she was mentioning something else, a fund in the board, within the board.
And I've got several people already within that 800. Some people, you could give $10, or you might give 500. It's just a choice.
And this is for a nonprofit
Yes.
status? So you can have like a Lake Lemon Foundation?
I'm calling it Friends of Lake Lemon for now, and we have several people who are interested in being on that initial board of directors. So it's looking very strong.
We will keep soliciting funds every meeting.
I just need personal contact, and once we have that money, the attorney is ready to go. The paperwork's already laid out and officially signed. It's an attorney in my firm. So I just want to share that with you. The second thing is, and I'm cognizant of the time, and I have to read this so I don't forget what I want to say. I do want to commend Pam for holding the discussion this evening and bringing it to having that civil discussion. I appreciate that. And I also want to thank everyone that's here for having the patience to let that process unfold. it can be dirt, it's like sausage. Sometimes it's a little ugly to watch it happen. But I also want to thank Andy for his diligence in looking at the open door law, and I'm going to come back to that with a real strong review, is that, and while you were chatting, I was reading through the Open Doors policy handbook, which is probably where you looked as well. And I come back to my question that I brought up last month, which is, how are the emails? I hear the emails have been circulating again. It's part of the minutes, it's part of this conversation tonight. How are those being collected? How are they being maintained? And how are they accessible to the public at large? So that question is still unanswered for me that I asked.
They've been
Let me
working-
finish,
okay,
and then
all right.
you can
Just wanted to know that
respond
there's
at
somebody that will
point.
be able to discuss
And I have
that.
a little bit more to go with that. The DSC, and that's for everybody, the dredging subcommittee, if you weren't sure of the acronym, because I had to figure out what DSC meant. It took me a minute.
ESG.
JSG, okay. I believe that that is a subcommittee of the board. That's my understanding. And my understanding of the open doors law is that committee is subject to the same open doors law that this board is. I serve on a City of Bloomington commission. We're very cognizant. We had a meeting last weekend where we met the mayor at an event, and we were making sure that there weren't a quorum of us at any particular point so that there would be no violation of the open doors law. But I also want to come back to the fact that it is tough sometimes to get a meeting together. And it may be time to think about what constitutes that, who constitutes that committee, if that committee can no longer meet on a regular basis. There's also a 48-hour rule that is required for public notice if you change what is standardly known as the meeting time for a group. And that doesn't include weekends and holidays. So I would ask that we make sure before you meet again that you're confident in the attorney review that how you're going to meet so that you can have conclusions that can be accepted by the board and acted on. Because the open doors policy would suggest to me that Andy was spot on in saying that no conclusions can take place. And yes, someone can, and it's very clear, someone can participate electronically, but their vote may not be counted in any action. And that's very clear. So if it's time to get Angela on board, it's time to get Angela on board. But we need to protect you all so that you can do your work, and it may be that it's time to make that call. So now, if there's a question,
We have had a recommendation from Angela regarding emails and the open door policy. I will send you what we have from her. I'm not sure when it was done,
Can you
James.
summarize?
Somewhere in the past. The summary is, yes, all the emails are subject to open door policy. They are stored on our server. That server is not open for somebody just to come in and read through the entire emails. A person may request a specific email or information about a specific event, and then we would have to provide that email that they requested. But nobody can come in and say, I'd like every email from 2014 and to see through them. That we're not subject to that. But if they come in and I know there's an email between this or on this specific subject, I'd like to get that information, then we must provide that.
And did she address the question of how is the public to know that an email exists if it's not available for public review?
I'm not positive on that.
Okay.
But I'll relook through that and
That's
I'll
a
forward you what
very
she said.
specific question I would ask you to follow up on.
Thanks, Susan.
I also agree with you. Our dredging study group, my understanding, falls under open door law and has not followed those laws up until this point.
Well, we just need to help that
Right,
process.
and I think that's something that we need to address.
We need to make sure that everyone's protected so the hard work can be used.
Right.
It's only a 30-day potential punitive period for that, so we're in the free now. So I guess from here on out.
Not so good of the order. District 7 lost a good friend in John Ellis last month. So I know you were good friends with John. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. John was a great guy. And as the board knows, he did a lot of work around the lake, did a lot of things for the lake.
Used to pick up trash on the causeway.
Besides growing up at the lake, his dad was one of the first people to start building homes on the lake. And it was sad, but again, with his condition, it wasn't all that bad. John was pretty well ready to go.
Okay. Well, I would love to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, and in doing so, it's hard to believe, next time we see each other, that will be behind us, and Christmas and such ahead, but thank you all for coming and working on the lake. See you next time.
Motion to adjourn.
Move and adjourn, sorry.
Second.
Actually, Taylor, you don't have to adjourn.
Wait, you do not, I read that. Thank you.